Okay, so now we're going to work on the contact section, which does have a Google map. We'll probably get to it in this video, but if not, then we'll get to it in the next one, because I do want to do the form first. So let's go down to the bottom here. We'll add another comment for section of contact, and let's do a section tag, give it an ID of contact, and we're going to have basically this contact section is going to be a flex container, and then the map and the form are going to be the flex items. So the first one will be the form, so I'll give it a class of, let's do contact dash form. So this will have the form in it, and then I'm going to do a class of map. Now the Google map, that nothing goes inside of here. Everything is basically done through JavaScript. Okay, so we'll have to look into that after. But let's add the form for now. So I'm actually going to also add a class of bg-primary, which I don't believe we've done yet, but this is where we have the green background, the primary color as the background. And then I'm going to do p2, which will give padding all around. So inside here, let's do an h2. Let's use our m heading class. And we'll say contact us. And then inside the paragraph, we'll say, please use the form below to contact us. Okay, and then let's do a form. We don't need an action. We're not actually submitting it. And then in here, we'll do a class of form-group, which wraps the label in the input. So label, we'll say for name, and then let's do an input with a type of text, and the name will be name, ID will be name, and then let's also add a placeholder, and we'll say enter name. Okay, so if we take a look at that, you can see it's very ugly looking for now. And then we'll copy this form group. Let's copy this down. Let's see, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have 4 of these. The second one is going to be the email. So let's change the for attribute to email. We'll change this to email. The type we'll change to email. The name and the ID, email. And we'll say enter email for the placeholder. Okay, and then we're going to have phone number. So this is going to be phone, and let's see, the type, we'll just keep that as text. The name is going to be phone, ID, phone, and then we'll say enter phone number. And then this last one's going to be a message, so for message, label, message, and it's going to be a text area instead of an input. So I'm going to get rid of the input and the type, and I'm going to replace that with text area, and we need to add an ending text area tag as well. And we'll say enter message for the placeholder. We'll change the name and the ID to message as well. Okay, now we just need to do a submit. So let's go under the div, and let's do an input with the type of submit, and the value is just the text that's going to read. So we'll just say we'll say send for the value, and then I just want a class of btn, and I'm also going to make this dark. Remember, we have that btn dark class that we created in our CSS. So let's save that, and it should look like this. Okay, so now let's add the styling for the form. We also want to add that bg-primary right here because we don't have that as a class. So let's go up to our utilities. We'll go right under bg-dark and say bg-primary. And background is going to be this green color. Okay, and then color is going to be white. So that's bg-primary. Now, down below, down at the bottom, under the clients section, Actually, you know what we'll do? We'll say section clients. Let's say section contact. Let's see. So the contact itself, the ID of contact, that's going to be our flex. So let's say display flex. Okay. Now the map, let's see. I want the contact form and the map by default to have a flex 1 so that they're even. When it's on a wide screen, I'm going to change it so that the form is smaller and the map is bigger. But for now, let's take contact in the class of map. Actually, you know what we can do is just add them both. We'll put a comma and we'll say take contact in the class of contact form, and let's say flex 1 for both. So now it's just even. Now let's style the inputs, the labels, stuff like that. So the form group, so contact and then contact form and then the form group. I'm just going to add a margin so that they're separated a bit. So let's do 0.75 rems. Okay, and then we'll do the label, because I want the label to display block. Right now it's inline. You can see it's, you know, it's to the left of the input, but I want it to be on top. So let's take contact form label, and let's display as a block level element. So if I save that, you'll see that now it's on top. All right, and then for the input in the text area, so we'll say contact form input as well as the text area. Let's go ahead and set a width of 100% so it goes all the way across, and let's add some padding. Let's say 0.5, and there we go. So that looks pretty decent. Now we'll work on the map. So what we're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to log into your Google account, and then I want you to just type in search Google Console. Not the search console, we want the cloud console, because we're working with a Google map. That means that we need an API key, because it has to make a request to the Google servers to get the location and all that stuff. So let's go. You're gonna have to have a project. Okay, now I already have one called dev1. If you don't have a project, just do new project, call it whatever you want. Once you have a project, if you click over here on API and services, it's going to show you, let's see, right here we want to say enable APIs and services, and it's going to show you all the different Google services, which there's tons of. We want maps, right here, maps JavaScript API. Okay, so you're going to want to click that. Mine's already enabled. You'll probably see a button that says enable. Make sure you click that, and then you should see something like this. Make sure it's enabled. Mine is, as you can see, I have a disable option. And then you want to go to credentials, and you want to create an API key. So let's see. I mean, you can see mine right here. See, where would we go here? I mean, I already have one, but you should see something like create new API key, I believe, or credentials API manager. Here we go. So create credentials API key, and it'll give you something that looks like this. And you can restrict it to certain domains and stuff, but we're not going to do that. Just go ahead and save it. So now you should have an API key. All right, I'm just gonna, let's see, I just want to check which one of these I actually used. Let's see, where is it? AIZSY. All right, so I use this one here. So you can actually copy it. If you click this, it'll copy it to your clipboard. And for now, I'm going to go into my index.html, and I'm just going to put this inside of a comment down here just so I have it. All right, now next thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and search for Google Map Docs and click on the first link here, the overview, and this basically tells us what we need to do. So we need to add a script tag. So a script tag just includes a JavaScript file, and we're including the JavaScript maps file, but we also need to put in our API key. All right, and then we need to add a little bit of JavaScript. Ours is going to be, it's going to resemble this, but instead of putting it inside of script tags right in our HTML, we're going to put it in that main.js file that we created. And notice that they have a div with the ID of map. We used a class, but it doesn't really matter. We can target a div or a class, and that's where the map goes. And then you can see up here they set the height to 100% because it's like a background image. It needs to have a height, or it needs to have some kind of content in it to actually display. So what we're going to do is just copy this right here, this script. We're going to go back into our HTML, go right above the body. We're going to paste that in, and where it says your API key in all caps, you're going to grab your API key and just put it right in there. So I'm going to Control C to copy it, and then Control V to paste that right in there. All right, now we also need to include our main.js file. So we're going to go right above it and put in a script tag. So if we do script and then a colon and then src, that will add a source attribute. Okay, just like an image, when you have an image, you point it to a source, right? Well, with a JavaScript file, we also use source. So we're going to point to the JS folder. Actually, we can do, yeah, we'll just do js/main.js. Now, I mean, we're not talking too much about JavaScript in this course, but just remember, when you include JavaScript, you use source. When you include CSS, you use href. Okay, I know that some people, when they're starting out, they get that confused. They'll do link and then source like that, or a script tag with an href. Okay, just remember that JavaScript uses the source attribute. So that will include the main.js file. So let's go ahead and save this, and then we want to actually go into our main.js file, and I'm going to actually paste in the JavaScript, and then I'll quickly go over it. Like I said, this is not a JavaScript course. I don't really want to get too much into it. I do have a 21-hour JavaScript course on Udemy if you're interested, which I would recommend after this one. So I'm going to paste this in. You guys can copy this, or you can get it from the finished project. And basically what's happening here, if we look in the index.html, it's linking to the maps API, and it has this callback equals init map. This init map is a function. Okay, it's this function here that we're creating. So it's going to call this init map. Init is short for initialize. And then what we're doing here is putting in our location, which is, this is actually called a JavaScript object, and it has a latitude and a longitude. Now this latitude and longitude is actually is centered in Boston, Massachusetts. If you want your map to be somewhere else, you can get the latitude and longitude from there. And there's certain sites you can do that with. So let's just say like get latitude and longitude from address. And if you go to latlong.net, you could put in any address here, like, or anything. We could just say like New York and find, and it'll get us just a random place in New York, which you can see here. So you could put any latitude and longitude that you want into this object. Okay, but we're just going to stick with Boston, Massachusetts. Now this here is creating what's called a variable called map, and we're setting it to a new Google map, and then this document.query selector is targeting the class of map. Okay, now remember, in our index.html we have this class of map. So we're targeting that, and that's where we want to insert the map. And you can change the zoom level, so we're going to keep it at 14, but you can lower it if you want, or higher it. And then we're saying the center position is going to be in the location. Okay, our location was also put into a variable, which is basically a placeholder. And if you don't understand anything I'm saying, don't worry about it. Down here is where we're putting our marker, because we want a marker in that special location. So we're saying create a new marker, and the position should be the location, which is this variable, and the map should show this map. Okay, so hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense of what's going on here. I don't expect you to know JavaScript yet. So let's save this, and if we go back to our project, this is our project, we have a map. Okay, so it's as simple as that. If that was simple, maybe that was really hard if you're just getting into this. If you're already familiar with JavaScript and stuff, and you've been watching my tutorials, then this is probably brutal for you to watch, because at some point this is going to be very simple for you. But yeah, we have our map, we have our form, so good. Now I think that we can get our footer in here. That's the last thing on the page, and there's not really anything to it. So let's head back to index.html, and under our section here, let's put in our footer. I'm going to use the footer tag, and I'm also going to give it an ID of main-footer. All right, and then in here we're just going to put a paragraph with a copyright. So we'll say copyright. We'll put our ampersand copy semicolon. Remember that. We'll say 2091. Be long gone by then. Copyright 2019. Edge ledger, and we'll say all rights reserved for our text. And then actually I want to put that in a container so that it stays in the middle. So we'll just move this up into the container. And then I want to add some extra classes to this footer. So let's do bg-dark, and let's do text-center, and then py-1, which will put the padding on the top and the bottom. And we'll save that. And there we go, that looks good. So we're going to go ahead and stop here, and in the next video we're going to add our smooth scrolling, which is also JavaScript. I'll go over very briefly. We'll be using something called jQuery, which I'll talk about a little bit. But right now I can hit what, brings us down to the what, the who. The menu does cover some of it, because the menu is basically fixed. The rest of the site doesn't pay attention to the spacing here, so it does start like up here. But we can actually kind of work that out with the jQuery. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.